Brent Rooker, 2025 MVP? Maybe.
You are Locked On A's, your daily Oakland A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your host, Booney. That's right, one name. Episodes will drop Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. That's Oakland time, Vegas time, and Sacramento time. Whether you are on your way to work, driving back from work, or listening casually during the day, thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen of the day. I have been a diehard A's fan since 1981, and I'm here to bring you a real fan's take covering everything from Oakland to Sacramento to Las Vegas. This is the place for A's fans to get the latest game breakdowns, team news, and more. This is where the passion of the fans take center stage. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. And please hit that subscribe button wherever you are following the show. With the A's leaving Oakland, it has allowed me an opportunity to reminisce about all the great ball players I have had the opportunity to watch over the years. So I have decided to give you my all-time A's team by position. That is later. When I look to 2025, we have talked about the prospects, potential trades, and signing free agents. That is great. But who on our current roster that is expected to contribute has the most to prove in 2025? We'll cover that in about 10 minutes. First, with the American League MVP finalists being announced in Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, and Bobby Witt, it has A's fans thinking about the year Brent Rooker had, and if we can possibly be looking at the 2025 American League MVP. Is that a stretch? This episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The 2024 season gave A's fans a lot to talk about, but today we're focusing on the man who has everyone asking the big question. Can Brent Rooker be the next American League MVP? With MVP finalists like Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, and Bobby Witt, Rooker's season stacks up in some exciting ways. Let's look at the numbers and discuss why Rooker might be someone to watch in the 2025 MVP race. First, let's recap the American League MVP finalists for this year. Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, and Bobby Witt. Each of these guys brought something special to their teams in this season. Judge, as always, crushed it in the power department. Soto proved himself to be one of the best pure hitters in the league, and Bobby Witt combined speed, defense, and hitting in an impressive way. But the real question for A's fans is, how close was Brent Rooker to these MVP level players? Could he possibly be in the conversation next year? Let's dig into the numbers and compare him head to head with these MVP finalists. Let's start with Rooker's 2024 season stats. He hit .293, smacked 39 home runs, and drove in 112 runs. Here's where he stood compared to the top MVP candidates. Batting average, Brent Rooker, .293 was solid and ranked third among these MVP candidates. trailing just behind Soto and Witt. It's also worth noting that his average placed him 7th overall in the American League. Batting average might not be the main focus in modern MVP discussions, but it still matters when paired with power and run production, both of which Rooker showed plenty of this season. Home runs, Rooker hit 39, ranking him 3rd among these finalists, right behind Judge and Soto. And if Rooker played at Yankee Stadium, he might have hit 70. Just saying. The 39 home runs tied him for 4th in the American League, sharing the spot with Jose Ramirez from the Cleveland Guardians. Power like that from any A's player definitely caught some attention around the league. RBIs. This is where Rooker's season really shines. He drove in 112 runs, which was 2nd highest total among the MVP candidates and ranked 3rd in the American League overall. Those RBI numbers show that Rooker was clutch for the A's in critical moments, consistently driving in runs when it mattered. Let's look at these stats in context. Each of these MVP finalists brings unique skill. Judge leads in power, Soto in consistency and on-base percentage, and Witt with his combination of speed, hitting, and defensive versatility. Rooker might not have the same speed or defensive edge as Witt, but his power and RBI numbers are right in the mix with these MVP finalists. Think about it this way. For an MVP candidate, you want someone who is performing at an elite level in multiple categories. Rooker's mix of a high batting average, home run power, and RBI production means he's giving the A's a lot to work with. Could his skill set put him into MVP discussions in 2025? The biggest question may come down to the A's team performance. MVP voters often lead towards a player whose teams are competitive. If the A's can improve their standings and Rooker continues to post numbers like this season, his case could become very compelling. So what could Rooker do to get his name on the MVP finalist list next year? Here are a few key areas. Defensively, they're talking about moving Rooker consistently into an outfield position. We will see if that unfolds the way it is being described. He is definitely athletic enough to play the outfield. He has some speed. He has the athleticism. We'll see how that works. Consistency. Rooker needs to maintain or even improve that 293 batting average. Consistency at the plate will be crucial for him to stand out in a field with hitters like Soto who are on base machines. On top of that, Rooker needs to cut down on his strikeouts. He was 2nd in the American League in the amount of times he struck out. Power. Hitting 39 home runs was impressive, but pushing that number into the low 40s could give him an edge. In today's game, more homers will certainly make him stand out, especially if he's keeping pace with Judge. Now, whether Sutter Health is a hitter's park or not has gotten a lot of different opinions depending on who you speak with. One thing that will help is not having that Coliseum foul ground that took so many at-bats away from hitters. Team success. The A's performance as a team will play a big part. Voters love to see an MVP come from a playoff-bound or at least competitive team. If the A's can build a stronger roster around Rooker, it could give the momentum he needs for MVP consideration. Clutch performance. Rooker already proved he could drive in runs. Continuing to be the A's go-to guy in clutch situations will reinforce his MVP candidacy. More game-winning hits or key moments will make him hard for voters to ignore. Here's the bottom line, guys. Brent Rooker's 2024 season was an eye opener. And in many ways, it showed he can be right up there with MVP caliber players. If he can continue this level of play or even step it up further, there's every reason for A's fans to get excited about a possible MVP contender. Imagine what this could mean for the A's franchise. The A's are not typically thought of as a team that boasts MVP candidates in today's modern era. But Rooker's performance could change that perception and potentially bring more attention to the team as a whole. A true MVP candidate would be a huge boost for the A's fan base, for ticket sales, and of course, the team's overall morale. Could you imagine an American League MVP who plays in a minor league baseball park? Today's episode is brought to you in part by Select Quote. The World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy in your family's end zone. In sports, winning is everything. That's why you always need a good strategy to keep you moving towards the goalpost. Winning strategies for life are just as important. And that's why on my team, I have life insurance through SelectQuote to protect my legacy and my family's financial future. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/locked on. Go to selectquote.com/locked on today to get started. That's selectquote.com/locked on. Which A's player has the most to prove? Now, when we look at last season's roster, there's one name that keeps coming up in conversations about untapped potential and unmet expectation. That name, Zach Geloff. Today, we're breaking down what went wrong for Geloff in 2024 and why 2025 is shaping up to be a redemption year for this young infielder. So sit back, grab your glove, and let's talk A's baseball. Let's rewind to the end of 2023 for a moment. Zach Geloff came onto the scene and gave us a reason to believe. In just 69 games, he showed a spark that A's were missing. He posted a solid batting average of 269, smashed 14 bombs, and swiped 14 bases. And let's not forget, he had an impressive OPS of 840, which really made fans think this guy could be a star for us. For those who might be newer to baseball, an OPS or on base plus slugging combines how often a player gets on base with their power hitting ability. Geloff's .840 OPS, that's sizzling. And it's the kind of number that puts you on the radar as a future powerhouse in this league. When 2024 season kicked off, Zach Geloff had fans dreaming big. He was young, dynamic, and seemed like just the guy to spark a struggling A's lineup. But then reality hit hard. The Zach Geloff we saw in 2024 didn't look anything like the guy from 2023. Across 139 games, he batted just 211, barely above the Mendoza line, which is the 200 mark most players want to avoid dipping below. His OPS, a mere .632, compared to his rookie season, it was like night and day. The numbers alone tell a painful story, but let's break down what went wrong. Strikeouts. Zach struck out 188 times, leading the entire American League. Striking out is like a missed opportunity every single time. No chance to advance a runner or put pressure on the defense. For context, those are the kind of strikeout numbers we typically see with power hitters. Geloff, though, didn't deliver enough power to balance out those strikeouts with just 17 home runs to his name. Low batting average and on base performance. When your batting average sinks to 211, it means you're not getting hits or getting on base enough, which is a huge problem for a team's offensive flow and a huge problem for the Oakland A's in 2024. The consistency issues really set him back. And what made this tough was that expectations were sky high. The team, and let's be honest, the fans too, were looking at him as a potential game changer. Geloff's performance or lack thereof didn't just affect his own stats, it had a ripple effect on the A's entire lineup. So, why did things go downhill so dramatically? Well, there are a few things to consider. League adjustments. In baseball, the league catches up fast. Players who come out strong are quickly studied by pitchers and coaches who look for every weakness to exploit. In Geloff's case, pitchers seemed to find his weak spots, and he couldn't adjust quickly enough to counter them. Self-imposed pressure. There was no doubt that Geloff put a lot on his own shoulders. When a young player gets hyped up, they feel the weight of those expectations and try to do too much. Trying to hit a home run every at bat or force plays that aren't there can throw a player off their natural rhythm. Mental game and confidence. Baseball is as much a mental game as it is a physical one. When you get into a slump, it's hard to climb out of it. And when fans and the media start discussing those strikeouts and low averages, that adds another layer of stress. Let's fast forward to today. The 2025 season is right around the corner, kind of. And Geloff's at a crossroads. Why? Because he's shown that he has the talent. We saw it in 2023. He's also shown that he has areas where he's struggling to grow, as we saw in 2024. So here's what Geloff needs to focus on: plate discipline. The key to reducing those strikeouts will be working on his patience and pitch selection. When a batter can resist chasing pitches outside the zone, they can avoid those wasted at bats. Consistency over power. Geloff doesn't need to hit 30 homers to be valuable to the team. A consistent batting average, making contact, and being able to get on base are what the A's really need. Defensive improvement. He was average at best at second base. To carve out a long-term role with the A's, Geloff can focus on his defense. A reliable infielder can add value beyond the box, and a strong defense can sometimes make up for offensive struggles, which Geloff definitely needs to do. The A's are in a building phase. Geloff can be one of those building blocks, only if he can prove that he's learning and growing from his setbacks. So A's fans, what can we expect? Well, if Geloff can show improvement early in 2025, he'll not only silence some of the doubters, but also prove to himself that he belongs in the big leagues. If you're a fan rooting for him, like I am, look for the small wins. Is he drawing more walks? Is he hitting line drives instead of always swinging for the fences? These are the things that will indicate he's on the right track. As we look to next season, Zach Geloff stands out as the A's player with the most to prove. If he can bounce back and find his rhythm, he'll be a huge asset to the team. But if 2024 struggles carry over, well, it's hard to say where things will go. The stakes are high, but that's baseball. It's a game of adjustments, resilience, and, of course, hope. And with the A's, we are always hopeful. Today's episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. When I personally look at a sports book, there are two things that are most important to me. Is it easy to deposit? And more importantly, is it easy to withdraw? FanDuel checks both boxes for me. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. I have been looking forward to doing this segment for quite some time. My all-time Oakland A's team by position. Here are the rules. You have to have seen the individual play. In other words, I was too young to watch Catfish Hunter, Joe Rudy, Reggie Jackson as Oakland A's, so I can't put them on my list. I also have to remember the player as an A. For example, Mark McGwire. When I think of Mark McGwire, I think of St. Louis Cardinals. Everybody has their own preference and how they remember a particular player. You may remember Mark McGwire as an Oakland A's, then you could put him on your team. But this is my list, and this is how I remember the player. So I'm going to put them on my team. You can do whatever you want with your team, and I hope you do. Right fielder, Jose Canseco. How can we leave off the MVP and the first ever baseball player to have a 40-40 year? Canseco, for me, growing up and watching him, was thrilling. The biggest flashback I have with Canseco is the bomb he hit in the Sky Dome in Toronto. I still don't think the ball has landed yet. Canseco was so fun to watch play. Center field, this was tough for me. It came down to Dwayne Murphy, who batted right behind Ricky Henderson and let him steal all those bases. But I had to give it to Dave Henderson. Dave Henderson had a certain flair to him, a certain style to him. He won a World Series. He batted fifth. He was in there every single day. I loved his nickname, Hindu. I'm going with Dave Henderson, center field. Left field. This one's easy. The greatest leadoff baseball player of all time, Ricky Henderson. When you think of a combination of speed and power that you see in today's game, that was all started by Ricky Henderson. He was the first. He was an MVP, won a World Series. There was no one player that you got more excited about when he walked or got a hit or was on first base than Ricky Henderson. I compare Ricky Henderson being on first base as Michael Jordan with a basketball in his hand. He was that exciting for me to watch. Third base, Eric Chavez. Eric Chavez stuck with the A's for such a long time. And the first thing I think about when his name comes up is his glove. You talk about a defender. You talk about a gold glover. Eric Chavez was something else. And he anchored the middle of our lineup. Eric Chavez, to me, is my number 2 overall Oakland A, right behind Ricky Henderson. I think that highly of him. Shortstop, Miguel Tejada. I debated between Tejada and Walt Weiss, but it's hard to ignore the MVP year Tejada had and what he did in those Moneyball years and how he contributed offensively. His glove was shaky, but he could sure swing it. And it's hard to leave him off the list. I got Miguel Tejada, shortstop. Second base. This was tough. I debated between Mark Ellis and Tony Phillips. And the only reason I didn't go Mark Ellis is because Mark Ellis seemed to be such a journeyman. He played with so many teams. I had a hard time remembering Mark Ellis as just an A. Tony Phillips, on the other hand, I remember as an A. First base. There is going to be some controversy on this one, but I am going with Jason Giambi. Yes, I understand he signed with the Yankees, and many people remember him as a Yankee. I remember him as an A. In the MVP year he had in 2000 and the MVP year he should have won in 2001. Giambi, to me, will always be an Oakland A's, and that's how I remember him. You may disagree, and I would understand why, but for me, I remember Jason Giambi as an A more than I remember Mark McGwire as an A. They both played first base. I get it. But when I think of Mark McGwire, I think home run record, St. Louis Cardinals. I'm going Jason Giambi, first base. Catcher, Terry Steinbach. Catchers weren't supposed to hit when I started watching baseball. There were very few catchers that can hit. Terry Steinbach was one of them, and he mashed. Huge part of the success of the teams in the late 80s and the early 90s, and managed that pitching staff to a T. Terry Steinbach is my catcher. DH. How can I not? I just talked about him. Brent Rooker. Brent Rooker signifies everything that there is about being an A. His journey to the big leagues, his success with the A's, his MVP season in 2024. Brent Rooker, DH. My pitching staff, Barry Zito. Yes, I understand he had the big contract with the Giants, but we know what he did with the Giants, and we know what he did with the A's. He's a Cy Young Award winner with the A's, one of the best pitchers in baseball. And when I think of Barry Zito, I think of that curveball. Starting pitcher, Mark Mulder. Another one that's debatable here because a lot of people can remember Mark Mulder as a Cardinal. I get it. I remember Mark Mulder as an A and part of the big three. But at the same time, here's what's controversial about my list. I'm not including Tim Hudson. He was part of the big three. He was included in the big three, but when I think Tim Hudson, I think Atlanta Brave. Hey, like I said, my list. You can have your list. This is my list and how I remember the players. Also part of my pitching staff, Dave Stewart. I don't think there's an individual that is a better example of what Oakland's all about than Dave Stewart. And what he did in those seasons in the late 80s and the success he had and how he went about his business was different. Stewart was just intense. Stewart can anchor down any pitching staff, and he's on mine. The fourth pitcher of my pitching staff, Dallas Braden. Love Braden. Perfect game. Is everything about Oakland. In closing out my pitching staff, one of the first pitchers I saw pitch growing up, Mike Norris. Electric stuff. Dominant. Early 80s. Big fan of Mike Norris. And he's the fifth member of my pitching staff. To close out the game, my closer, I think this one's an obvious one. Dennis Eckersley, the greatest closer of all time. He won the American League MVP and the American League Cy Young Award as a closer, which is unheard of. That's my team. I would love to hear who you have on your team. There's no right answers. There's no wrong answers. It's just who you personally like to watch and who gave you the best memories. Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and I will see you tomorrow.
You are Locked On A's, your daily Oakland A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.